But one candidate has created massive online buzz and is standing out by speaking out.
Ron Paul, a 10th-term congressman from Texas and candidate for the 2008 Republican presidential nomination, is considered a long shot by the mainstream media. But his libertarian views and straight-shooting attitude have converted legions of internet users to his side. After a televised CNN debate, an internet poll had 60% of voters declaring Paul the winner. He's been the #1 search term on Technorati since May, and his YouTube channel is the most subscribed to out of all the Republican candidates. Congressman Paul has voted against raising fines for indecent broadcasting and banning internet gambling, but voted against net neutrality. Does Ron Paul actually have a chance at mobilizing web voters? Or is the online buzz just another example of the internet echo chamber? Vote or die. It's The Loop.
All right, my guest tonight is a Republican congressman from Texas and 2008 presidential candidate, Ron Paul. Ron, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
I've seen clip after clip online, and you're repeatedly asked about, the same set of issues. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to focus on some topics that I think our viewers feel are going to be important.
Fine.
All right. There's always been sex and violence in the media, and for politicians, it's always a convenient target during election cycles. And I'm wondering what role that you think the government should play when it comes to policing television or movies, music, even video games.
Well, I would go to the Constitution. I would go to the First Amendment, and it reminds us that Congress shall write no law. And I think if the Congress shall write no law regarding freedom of speech and expression, the courts shouldn't do it either. And it should not be in the realm of Washington politics to regulate any form of expression, whether it's in books or whether it's radio or television or on the internet.
Now, Ron, there's so many parents and groups that are going to say, what about the children, though? I mean, some say that without the fear of that government intervention, that these industries wouldn't even bother with any self-regulation.
Well, then I would suggest to them that the responsibility falls on the parents and on individuals. If the individual's old enough, they can pick and choose what they want to look at. But children should be the responsibility of parents. I know it's difficult. I've raised 5 kids, and we have a lot of grandchildren. But the whole thing is there's technology available to help screen and designate it. They protect their children against religious and political views that they don't like. So on other things, it should be done voluntarily. It shouldn't be done by the government. Even though you might argue, well, there might be a little bit of benefit if the government got involved, quite frankly, I think it's so dangerous that the politicians and the government, especially at the federal level, would be involved in regulating to the point where they were abusing our rights and ignoring the First Amendment. And that,
but Ron, they've done so well with the FCC. I'm shocked to hear you say that. But let me ask you about the mainstream media. I mean, the mainstream media right now, they consider you to be a long shot. But online, you're bigger than John McCain on Facebook. Your YouTube videos have been seen millions of times. I mean, you're practically like the lonely girl of the Republican Party, if you will. Why does there seem to be such a disconnect between the offline and the online world?
Well, maybe there isn't that much disconnect. Maybe the people who do videos and use the internet don't have landline telephones, and maybe nobody calls them and asks them what they're interested in. But the other thing is I think the views of liberty and the concentration and the principled approach to our problems through the Constitution is very attractive to young people. And I think a lot of young people are involved in the internet and are interested in this, and they understand principle more than those who have learned over the decades to adjust to principles. Politicians and business people, they're very, very eager to adjust. But I think young people are much more attracted to these views. Right. And yet the big question is,
young people online, they were really psyched about snakes on a plane, but that didn't translate to big ticket sales for Sam Jackson. I mean, are you worried that page views on a MySpace page might not translate to primary votes?
Yeah, I don't worry about it, but it's a possibility. I don't worry much about that at all. I worry about understanding the issues and presenting the case and see if I can, get people to support these views. Mm-hmm. And in that regard, I'm very pleased with what's happening.
Now, Ron, you've got a reputation online as sort of a net defender, but I have to ask, you voted, for the Online Freedom of Speech Act, which would have actually excluded the web as a form of public communication. You voted against extending a ban on the taxation of internet access, and then there's the issue of net neutrality, which you voted against as well. And on the surface, there's some people that are saying, well, that sounds very anti-internet, coming from someone who owes the internet a lot for the exposure.
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely opposed to any taxation or any regulations. So net neutrality to me has some regulation in it. And the tax business was a tricky one, and it wasn't easy because I saw that as a concession that they had authority over taxes. If they could say, well, you can't do this, I thought I was conceding too much authority that, yes, if it's sort of like endorsing the income tax at 1%, you concede too much authority. I didn't even want to concede that they had any authority to even talk about taxation or preventing taxation. I just don't want any taxation on the internet whatsoever, and I don't want any regulation at all.
Well, now, when you say no regulation, don't get me wrong, I don't trust the government to regulate the temperature of my dressing room. But do you trust the Verizons or the AT&Ts of the world to actually give internet users equal access to all media online?
Well, and quite frankly, I don't understand all the details, but if you believe in the free market, you try to work out a way to solve those problems through contractual arrangements, not through depending on government regulations. So, yes, they are difficult, and like I admit, I don't understand all those problems that we face, although the point I make is that I have a healthy disregard and fear of the bureaucrats doing it, because once you do that, those big companies are going to regulate. They're going to be the lobbyists and the politicians and regulate the law, and I think you'll be in worse shape.
Okay, Ron, at the very least, would you agree that the internet's more complicated than being just a series of tubes?
Oh, obviously.
Okay,
Especially since I don't understand a lot of it, and I've learned a lot, but I understand the principles of freedom pretty well, and hopefully I'm understanding the Constitution pretty well, so I work in that regard. So if
I think you are more so than many other people that I've seen that are running for this thing right now.
But I'm open to learning and understanding it even better.
Well, Ron, on many important issues from the war on terror to health care, I mean, you do seem to offer refreshing insight and rational explanations. But none of that seems to matter because you've said yourself you don't have $100 million. I mean, isn't that the single greatest issue that's threatening our nation? The fact that ideas and solutions mean nothing without a certain amount of financial backing?
A certain amount, but the person with the most money doesn't always win. There's been many who have spent many millions of their own dollars and not necessarily win. But it is a shame, and we're moving in the wrong direction because they're moving up all these primaries. So if there's a grassroots type candidate like myself, they're not going to give us much chance to get started in 1, 2, 3, 4 independent individual states. They're going to bunch them all together, and everybody's going to have $50 million or $75 million to run by March 5th. But the big thing is how beneficial is the internet? How many people can be excited by it? It's helping us a whole lot. When we go out for rallies and fundraising, it's very helpful.
Oh, sure. I think single-handedly you're proving the power of the internet as a medium for change, and we appreciate that. I want to thank you for joining us in the Loop one-on-one, Congressman. And actually, Ron's going to hang out. He'll be back in just a few minutes.
Yes. Hi, Congressman Paul.
Hello.
First off, I'd like to say that I think it's great that you speak for yourself and don't just follow the party line. Your platform seems to be largely based on the idea of getting government off people's backs and that the government shouldn't be the regulators of morality. But on the issue of abortion rights and some other social issues, you seem to think that the federal government should have a say. How do you reconcile those two positions?
No, I don't think the federal government should have a say. I'm pro-life. But I don't think the federal government should be involved. I think it should be a state issue because I consider it an act of violence. You know, just recently we had that mother that was killed, but 2 charges were made against murder because her baby was killed as well. So I accept the principle that the live fetus has rights to live, but we don't deal with acts of violence at the federal level, at least we're not supposed to. So I would see that as a state issue to be sorted out and that the federal government ought to stay out of it.
All right, Miles, we want to thank you for your question. Up next on Stick Cam, we have Nick from San Francisco, California. Nick, go for it, sir.
Hi, Mr. Paul. My question is, how has the internet generation affected the political process?
The political
process.
Well, I think more every year. We heard about this, a decade ago, just in a mild sense, but even 3 years ago, in the last presidential campaign, where they talked about John Dean, but I think it just has skyrocketed. It has just exploded to the point where you really can't control it at all. Everybody thinks and compliments me about how I've harnessed the internet and brought it to my assistants, but that isn't it. They've sort of harnessed it themselves. It's spontaneous. I think it's fantastic, and it's benefiting our campaign a whole lot. Some people want to try to emulate what I've done, but it isn't the case. It's the ideas that I have that people are attracted attracted to, and all of a sudden they spontaneously break out and form groups and spread messages and make videos. I mean, it is utterly fantastic.
Yeah.
And yet they say, well, I don't have as much money, but nobody has the spontaneity of supporters that I have.